This very conservative woman sold sex toys in the 1990s. She never would have imagined that this would change her fate. Suun was the most beautiful woman in the village. In her youth, she was the goddess of many villagers' hearts, but her husband was a guy who wanted to be someone he wasn't. Suun needed to work several part-time jobs every day to pay the rent. Not only did her husband not feel guilty, he resented the fact that Suun worked in so many different industries. Suun had no complaints about this and often encouraged her husband. She also believes that as long as the couple work together, everything will develop in a positive direction. Suun reached the day when her son entered elementary school, but she couldn't even afford to buy a school bag. Watching her son carrying a second-hand girl's school bag made her feel ashamed. In the same situation as her was this woman named Sora, a housewife with 4 children. The two were also urged by the teacher to pay the fees on this day, and they became friends at first sight. And they also developed a deep friendship in the future. Although Sun's husband is useless, her employer Jinky treats her very well. Jinky has a high degree of education and became a full-time housewife after marriage. But her husband's lack of understanding has made her life increasingly dull. However, on the other side of the village, a woman is in sharp contrast to her. Jimin's clothes are out of place in her surroundings, dazzling the men who pass by. She is a single mother who owns a hairdressing salon. She is fashionable, individualistic and humorous. When men accuse her of dressing inappropriately, she can skillfully diffuse the situation. Suun received this week's salary from her employer and is in a good mood. But when she saw the price of the bag, she couldn't buy it because she needed to save up for the next rent payment. While passing by a butcher's shop, Suun heard 2 women talking about the intimate details of men and women. She was so embarrassed that she hurriedly asked the butcher's wife to quickly wrap the meat up for her. The butcher's wife laughed and said that Suun was good in every way, except that she was too uptight in that area. Suun went home and opened the bag of pork. The words monthly salary 500,000 won on the newspaper caught her eye. After reading it carefully, she realized it was an advertisement for selling sexy lingerie. Suun thought to herself that there is no such thing as a good deal in the world. At this time, her husband returned. The new job he found was terminated after just a few days because he was arrogant. He beat up his boss and didn't get paid a penny. Suun felt like the sky was falling. Her husband shamelessly said at this time, "Because you are incompetent, I am like this." Suun had no choice but to do as many part-time jobs as possible to support the family expenses. But reality poured a bucket of cold water on her. During the interview, she was told that only unmarried people would be hired. Although Suun is very pretty, the boss has a principle of preferring ugly women. Suun was rejected everywhere she looked for a job that morning. When she returned home, she was faced with the landlord's wife demanding rent. She took out the family piggy bank only to find that all the money had been taken by her husband. When her husband returned, he said that he had taken the money to invest. He also said that if he succeeded, he would be able to multiply it by dozens of times. Suun asked him what was going to happen to the rent. Her husband just scratched his head in silence. We warmly suggest that if you encounter this kind of man, you should get a divorce quickly. Suun, who had no way out, thought of the advertisement she had seen before. Being conservative, she decided to try this profession that made her ashamed. Suun repeatedly hovered in front of the company's door, but she didn't have the courage to take that step. Coincidentally, Sora also had this idea, so she dragged Suun in together. When they saw the boss introduce the products, most people were shocked by the anachronistic sexiness. In the blink of an eye, there were only 2 interviewers left, Suun and, just as Suun was about to leave, a sentence from the boss stopped her in her tracks. The boss then told them about the origin of adult products and his own development. Adult products have a history of 30 years. It also allowed her to develop from an ordinary person who collected scrap metal to the current situation where she has a car, a house and savings. Unbeknownst to the 2, she had successfully brainwashed them. When they left, they already had a box of products each, but thinking about being able to earn 500,000 won a month, Suun was full of expectations for the future, and they don't have to pay for the goods. They just need to sell the products and hand them in to get a commission. Since she wants to do this business, Suun says she will succeed no matter what. Suddenly, a car without a roof drove past, attracting the attention of the 2. In the car was Si-hoon, a police officer who had been newly transferred. Si-hoon is a doctor who has returned from overseas. Originally, he worked in Seoul, but for some reason, he was transferred to this poor and remote area. At this moment, he could not imagine that he would have many intersections with Suun. On the other hand, if you want to sell something, you need a place. Suun is worried about this. She needs a big house. He discovered that Jinky's home environment seems to be very suitable. Suun then tried to propose to Jinky that she borrow her home to sell products. Jinky did not refuse and said she would support Suun in her business. She immediately asked Suun what products she was going to sell. After a while, Suun left dejectedly, but she couldn't get it out of her mind. She was distracted when she met her friends for lunch. At that moment, The phone rang in the house. It was Jinky calling. Jinky had agreed to Sun's request. This made Suun very excited and full of energy again. The reason why Jinky had changed her mind was that she had just been scolded by her husband. Her husband accused her of always preferring to stay at home. He claimed that times were changing. You should become a modern and free woman. Go out more often and do the things you like with your friends. Jinky was annoyed and thought of Suun, so she called. The next day, Jinky went to the hairdressers. To get ready for Suun's sales event, she gathered some friends and got a haircut suitable for the event. Jimin was excited to learn about the sales event and immediately expressed her desire to participate. She was obviously a potential customer with her sexy appearance. At that time, a customer came to the shop. She was the wife of the president of the royal club in the village. However, her relationship with Jinky was not harmonious. The lady is surprised to see Jinky here. Jimin doesn't want to talk about the lingerie sales meeting that night. Jinky is nervous, but fortunately the lady is not interested in this, because her daughter is coming back from Seoul tonight. On the other side, Suun is sneaking around, lifting her handbag from the corner with anticipation and heading towards the future. However, she left her handbag on the bus when she helped an old lady. Suun wants to catch up but is unable to do anything. She is so anxious that she is spinning in place. Si-hoon, who happened to be in a car, came into her line of sight. Suun approached him for help as if he were a lifesaver. Si-hoon was about to ignore her, but after Sun's repeated pleas, he relented. The car started and sped off at full speed. Suun experienced speed and passion for the first time. In no time at all, she caught up to the bus. Suun kept apologizing and thanking. She checked the product and finally let go of her lingering heart. Just as Suun couldn't wait to run forward, her foot suddenly slipped. At the last minute, Si-hoon directly reached out his hand. It's just that the position of his hand is a bit awkward. On the day of the sales meeting, Jinky's arch-rival, the chairman's wife, not only came, but also brought her daughter Seoyeon. What's more, Seoyeon is also Sun's classmate. Doing this for the first time, and in front of her classmates, this made Suun even more nervous. Jinky suggested selling more than just underwear, but Suun said that if she's going to do it, she'd do her best. She had practiced many times last night. She reassured Jinky not to worry too much, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Suun prepared everything with Sara and was ready to face the challenge. Seoyeon, who had sharp eyes, saw her and went over to her. Everyone's attention was fixed on Suun. Some of them even teased the conservative Suun, saying that she didn't need to be so formal when selling underwear. But the moment the product appeared in front of everyone's eyes, everyone was dumbfounded and full of confusion. Only Jimin was full of excitement, and the crowd gathered around, curious about the mosquito net-like fabric. One customer was very satisfied with one of the necklaces and couldn't wait to wear it around her neck. Suun immediately explained that it was a pair of underwear. The customer was instantly confused. How on earth could you wear such a small pair of underwear? The chairman's wife looked at the bottom of the pants that were not sewn together and questioned her soul. Suun was embarrassed and didn't know how to answer. Fortunately, Sara came to the rescue in time. After a short silence, the crowd came back from their shock. The chairman's wife felt that Jinky must have been deceived by Suun to sell such vulgar things here. Jinky, however, said that he majored in English literature in college, and frankly admitted that he had seen too many British movies and books, and was not surprised by such openness. In the UK, there are also many such things that have been filmed as art. In order to show that she is not vulgar, the chairman's wife quickly agreed, and the others quickly accepted these products. However, they said that there are not many styles to choose from. So Suun shyly took out the King's Bomb product, but she was at a loss for words when it came to its purpose. Suun was embarrassed when Seoyeon told Jimin, and the word spread quickly. Everyone was shocked to learn its purpose. The chairman's wife scolded Suun and told her to put the product away immediately. Suun was so scared that she dropped the product on the floor. The curious woman turned on the product. The violent shaking scared her and she didn't know what to do. After a lot of fuss, the guests were sent away. Suun and the others cleaned up the mess. When Suun was feeling down, Seoyeon volunteered to be her first customer. Jimin was also very interested in this matter, which made Suun forget her gloom. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Si-hoon and a police officer came to visit. After the chairman's wife left, she reported to the police that there was filth here. Suun then realized that Si-hoon was a policeman. Si-hoon was also surprised to find Suun here. After a routine inspection, he found that it was just selling underwear and didn't pursue it. The police officer suddenly heard a noise coming from one of the rooms. He opened the door and Jimin, wearing underwear, came into view. The cop's heart raced. Bashfully, she pulled Si-hoon away. Suun began to open her bag and rummage around. Jimin was afraid that products with strong vibrations would attract the police's attention, so she had already hidden them in advance. Just as everyone praised her resourcefulness, another embarrassing scene occurred. Suun's sales job became known overnight. Her husband didn't feel sorry for Suun's difficulties, but instead mocked her. Even after Suun explained to him that she was just doing business, he said, Is selling that kind of tacky stuff considered business? After her husband left, Suun couldn't hold back any longer. Tears of grievance slipped down her face. Her husband spent the night at his best friend's house, as Suun's best friend, Lucy, not only didn't speak up for her, she instead blamed Suun for not calling. Junkyu left without even eating dinner. Lucy is distressed to see that he hasn't eaten. Even her husband Donchul can't stand it anymore and asks her why she only supports Junkyu. Lucy despises Suun's occupation. Her husband tells her to mind her own business and shut up. At this time, Suun comes to Jinki's house to pick up the goods she didn't take yesterday. Jinki rebelliously says that the more her husband doesn't want her to do something, the more she wants to do it. So she also bought a set of underwear. Suun once again has motivation. With the vision of her future life, she took the initiative to go to Donchul's house to find her husband. Unexpectedly, she saw an unsightly scene, facing her husband's betrayal. Suun was disheartened and her mind went blank. She sat quietly in the car from day to night. The kind driver reminded her that this was the last bus before she came back to her senses. Suun, who never drank, tried to soothe her sorrows with alcohol for the first time. Her stumbling and embarrassing appearance was once again seen by Sihun. Sihun saw her in this state and asked her to go home quickly. Suun said she wanted to drink some more. She heard that getting drunk can relieve 1,000 sorrows, but the pain still wouldn't go away, so she had to keep drinking. She then said goodbye and left. Sihun didn't want to meddle in other people's business. Seeing Suun in this state, he followed her. The next day, Suun was still feeling groggy, but she had to continue selling goods in order to make a living. This made her feel a little irritated. Just then Sihun came over. Suun didn't want to explain too much, politely apologized and was about to leave. Sihun frowned when he smelled the strong alcohol on her. Suun then remembered that she had met Sihun last night. After thanking him, she walked away quickly. Ashamed, Sora was trying to sell products in the bathhouse, but Suun was distracted. Today was destined to be a day with no results. Sora noticed her frustration and asked with concern, but when she didn't want to talk about it, Sora changed the subject and talked about the work that lay ahead. Suun didn't know how to improve at the moment, but she firmly believed that if she kept working hard, she would succeed one day. Fortunately, Suun didn't stay depressed for long. She was still accompanied by her sensible son. Because of the rent, the landlady said unpleasant things in front of the child. In order not to worry her son, Suun had to take out company money to tide her over. Embezzling public funds made Suun very worried. At that moment, her son came over holding a piggy bank and handed over the money he had been saving up to buy a robot. The child, who understood, said that he was now in elementary school and no longer suitable for playing with robots. Her son's words made Suun feel extremely guilty. She, who had given up on herself, rekindled her fighting spirit. The next day, she and Sora learned about the products one by one and took notes. However, in the end, the English in the instructions for the fairy stick caused them to struggle. At that moment, Suun thought of Ginki. Jinki saw the translation of the contents of the manual and paused awkwardly. She didn't expect her degree in English to be used for something like this, but she was more curious about whether the product could enter the wonderful world as described in the manual. Suun shyly said she would tell her the result tomorrow. Her research room needs to be tried personally. Suun opened the fairy wand package that night. Under the influence of romantic jazz music, she walked into the bathroom. After personally experiencing it, Suun informed her partner of the result. Now she is full of confidence in this business. Sora is the same. She also tried on the red petticoat in front of her husband. The result almost made her an onion. Their evaluation was more exciting than Jinki expected. Right now, the problem of the sales venue needs to be solved. Suun shamelessly asked Ginki if she could borrow her home as a sales venue again. Although they were looking forward to it, they didn't dare to hope for too much. Unexpectedly, Jinki actually agreed. Suun was both grateful and excited. On the other side, the police officer talked about the few people in the village who often caused trouble. Suun's husband was one of them. The director explained that it was the husband of the woman who sold adult products. Junkyu often went to and from the police station when he was young. He would hit people whenever he disagreed. The police officers also couldn't understand why Suun, who was so beautiful, would look at someone like that. Sihun, however, said that the two might be of the same ilk. The director couldn't stand it anymore and stood up to speak for Suun. Sihun thought about this for a while, and soon after, he and the agent came to a villa together. He rented this place at a high price of 500,000 won per month just because it was a good place to observe. It seems that Sihun came to this village to investigate something. On Suun's side, she asked Jimin for help in selling. While waiting, she saw Jimin's son listening to a tea ceremony radio program and drinking milk elegantly. Suun got inspired from this and the next sales meeting became different from the last. There was quiet, elegant music playing in the background, and the customers were neatly arranged in 2 rows. Suun first gave an elegant introduction to the products. Then Jimin and Sora appeared as models. The sexy Jimin instantly attracted everyone's attention, and they gathered around. The butcher's wife praised Jimin's figure, saying that it was similar to her own. It seemed that she needed to get one for herself. Sara quickly pulled her over to help her realize her position. After having a tangible impression, everyone happily paid for their purchases. Then came the main event. Everyone got their hands on a magic wand, although there was no way to demonstrate this product to them. Suwon had done her homework and suggested a few international celebrities. In those days, the celebrity effect was just as effective. In one night, they actually sold out of all the products. This was Suwon's first step towards success. A few of them decided to find a place to celebrate. Everyone knew Suwon's financial situation. Ginky volunteered to treat everyone to a meal, because she had been so happy during this time. As the few of them were laughing and talking about setting off, Jinky's husband called. He had finally managed to make an appointment with the club president in order to expand the store. The husband asked Jinky to go over there and apologize to the president's wife. For the first time, Jinky disobeyed her husband on such an important matter. She still celebrated with the others and she also wanted to be the voice. Everyone was shocked to hear her thoughts. They all did business for money, but Ginky did it for fun. Since Jinky had married and come to this village, she had never been so happy. She asked Suwon if she could join. Unexpectedly, Suwon said no. Then she said, "If you want to do it, don't ask my opinion." Thus, they became partners on the same side. Their enthusiasm for drinking increased. Sara laughed and said that she actually didn't need those underwear. Her husband's prowess didn't need external support. Suwon was embarrassed and flustered. Jimin, as a single mother, also didn't need those underwear. Jinky, on the other hand, had never dared to wear the underwear her husband had bought because he was too conservative. The girls realized that only Suwon had this opportunity. Suwon's problems, which she had finally put behind her, came back to her mind. This made her feel very annoyed. What's more, Lucy, who was having an affair with her husband, also appeared at this time. Lucy was afraid that Suwon would tell her husband, so she hurriedly apologized. She also explained that the time she was seen by Suwon was the only time. Lucy claimed that after that day, she was very scared. At that time, she realized how much she loved Dongchul. Suwon was speechless when she heard this, but she said she would not tell Dongchul about it. Suwon knew the pain of being betrayed by the one she loved. She didn't want her friend Dongchul to go through the same thing as her. However, their conversation was overheard by Sara and Jimin. They were outraged and also learned the reason why Junkyu was not going home. After the group was shocked, they one after the other said that they could not let Lucy go. They did as they said. After Lucy entered the bathroom, the girls sneaked in after her to do justice. Afterwards, they retreated in a hurry. The bathroom was left with only Lucy, who was drenched, and her angry cries. Suwon, who had done something bad for the first time, was both nervous and excited, and didn't even realize that she had lost one of her shoes while running away. This behavior not only punished Lucy, but also strengthened the friendship between the girls. After a long time, Jinky's husband came home and immediately yelled at Jinky because she never showed up. In order to expand the store, he had to grovel before the chairman's husband, which made him lose face. This time, Jinky did not agree with her husband and even said that she wanted to do business with Suwon. Her husband felt ashamed of selling that kind of thing and scolded his wife for not being such a woman. Jinky, however, asked him what kind of woman he was. Was he the kind of woman who stayed at home all day worrying about what to cook for dinner, or the kind of woman who should understand her husband, even if she spends a lot of time at home? Her husband is busy entertaining clients and letting the food get cold, or the kind of woman who knows nothing about the world and can be taken advantage of. This operation stunned her husband. Jinky confessed that this period was the happiest time in her marriage. She thought life was boring. She didn't know until recently that it could also be so fun. But who knew that at this moment her husband could still hear what she was saying? Her husband's mind went blank. After Jinky's repeated calls, he pounced on her like a wolf. After last night's battle, her husband no longer opposed the business. As long as Jinky felt happy playing with those women, Jinky said it wasn't just playing. She thought it was indeed a project with potential. Just tell your husband not to refuse, and I'll take care of the rest. Everyone seems to be moving in a positive direction, but someone spray painted Suwon's house. On the other side, Sehun came to the village and was indeed investigating something. He set up the basement as an investigation room, and informed the other side in English that more investigation was needed and that he would definitely find it. On the wall were the relationships of suspicious people in the village. The landlord scolded Suwon for being a practitioner of a vulgar profession and advised her to change her profession. Suwon went resolutely and refused to give up this profession, and this scene happened to be witnessed by Sun's mother. The most frightening thing in the countryside is this kind of gossip. Her mother is extremely angry. She thinks about her son-in-law running away from home. She suspects that Suwon is selling these vulgar and disgusting goods. Suwon feels very aggrieved. Seeing that her mother still won't relent, she has no choice but to tell her the truth. Although her mother is incredulous for a moment, she still strongly opposes Suun's occupation. If she doesn't give it up, don't expect her to help with the children. Suun feels a lot of pressure from her mother's incomprehension. The landlady's wife calls the police. The case is handled by an old acquaintance. Sihun asks Suun if there is anyone she suspects. Suun says that although no one welcomes her business, she doesn't think anyone would go so far as to do this. After doing some research, Suun wants to paint over the graffiti. Sihun wants her to preserve the crime scene. But when he sees Suun worrying about her son, Sihun is at a loss for words. He takes a few photos and agrees to Sun's request. When Sihun was about to leave, he saw Suun trying to paint over the graffiti with difficulty on tiptoe. He couldn't help but walk over to help. The two of them successfully erased the graffiti before the child returned home. Sihun then went to the hardware store to ask if anyone had recently purchased red spray paint. The hardware store owner thought back carefully. Apart from the regular customers who always had a need to buy, the owner of the village rice shop bought a can yesterday, which the wife of the owner found suspicious. Sihun investigated and the owner of the rice shop was also eliminated as a suspect. Because her son was unattended, Suun had to turn down the job. Even if Sara found a business, Suun was also unable to help. At this moment she once again worried about the future. Fortunately, she still had the help of her good friends. Jimin learned from Sara about Sun's current predicament, so she volunteered to help babysit. Suun was grateful but didn't want to trouble others. Just as she was about to refuse, Jimin's son said, "We can play together." Suun was able to get time off work. In the afternoon, the three of them successfully made a sale. Sora, who had the best sales, offered to treat the two to food at a street stall. Jinky was a little uncomfortable, though she had never eaten at a street stall before, but now she wanted to try something she had never done before. As it turned out, the food at the street stall was really delicious. Just then, Donchul suddenly approached Suun. Donchul is oblivious to Suun and Lucy's previous disagreement, and invites Suun to his house for a home sales business on Lucy's birthday. Donchul has always wanted a child, but Lucy has never been able to get pregnant, and in his opinion, Lucy is not very interested in sex. Donchul has no idea that Lucy is just not interested in him. When Suun refuses, Sara steps in to save the day. Sara says that Suun has work arrangements and that she can go in her place. This would relieve Suun's embarrassment and also take advantage of Lucy. Suun sees no harm in it. However, things do not go as planned. The next day, Sora has an accident. She is being chased by a dog and falls, unable to move. Jinky also cannot go because of something. Suun is once again tasked with going to Donchul's house. She originally wanted to entrust her son to Jimin temporarily, but seeing Jimin busy in the store, Suun had no choice but to bring her son along to Donchul's house. Lucy was surprised to see Youngsuk. When she learned that her husband had invited her, she scolded him for not consulting her. Then Lucy told Suun that she could leave if she didn't like it, but Suun bluntly said that she didn't care. After all, she could make some money, so Donchul took Jack to the movies with him. In the cinema, Jack envies the other children who have their fathers with them. His grandmother tells him that his father has gone away because there is no work in the village. Donchul reassures him that as long as he eats well and grows up healthy, his father will be back soon. He then tells Jack to behave himself while he goes to buy popcorn. Suun can't help but think about the scene she witnessed at Donchul's house. Lucy's friend's words make Suun snap out of it. When you got married, were you attracted to other men? The two can't help but lock eyes. Lucy then scolds her friend for changing the subject. Meanwhile, Donchul returns to the cinema and discovers that Jack is gone. Sihun at the police station also receives an alarm call. Suun and the others have been searching for hours without any sign of their son. Donchul apologizes, saying he didn't know the child had disappeared for just a moment. His words of "I don't know" make Suun collapse. Seeing that Suun is about to reveal the affair at any time, Lucy quickly interrupts. At this time, Sihun has also arrived at the scene. The two set off together to search for the cinema. The anxious Suun slowly calms down with Sihun's reassurance. At the intersection, she meets her mother, who has come running. Her mother also came to look for her after receiving Donchul's phone call. When she saw Suun, she scolded her for taking her child to sell that kind of thing. Suun retorted that she needed to earn money, so what could she do? But her mother angrily told Suun to give up this occupation. She couldn't accept her daughter selling that kind of obscene thing. Just thinking about it made her tremble with anger. Now she was even doing it with her child. She didn't have the slightest bit of motherly feeling. She didn't have the slightest bit of shame. These words made Suun collapse again. She asked her mother in return, "I'm already panicking," and hurt her with such harsh words. Is this how a mother should behave? Sihun in the car quietly watched Suun's difficult situation. With mixed emotions, they went to the cinema and the nearby market, but failed to find the child. Sihun asked Suun if the child had any worries recently. Suun confessed that the child had been missing his father a lot recently. Sihun suspects that the child may be looking for his father. And sure enough, The child is found in front of the factory where Junkyu used to work. Jack apologizes to his mother. He just wants to meet the factory owner and beg him to give his father another chance so that he can continue living with his father. Hearing this, Suun feels very sad. Sihoon takes Suun home and, as they say goodbye, Suun solemnly expresses her gratitude to Sihoon. Sihoon returned after seeing the bruises on Suun's face. He left her with ointment and band-aids. As Sihoon walked away, Suun was filled with gratitude, although the past 2 days had been full of twists and turns. The next day was undoubtedly the happiest day for Suun. When she saw the paycheck, she felt that all her hard work had been worth it. Suun first went to the grocery store and bought the school bag she had been reluctant to buy for her son. Then she and Sora went shopping. This was the first time Suun had spent money so recklessly since she started working. You have to know that she had been working odd jobs before. This salary was like a huge sum of money to her. At the intersection, Suun met her mother. Since the last time she had a big fight with her mother, the two of them had not spoken. When her mother saw Suun, she also turned away. Suun was also lost for words, but her gaze would always quietly look towards her mother. Suddenly she saw her mother stop in her tracks, following her gaze. She saw her father flirting with his mistress. Her mother gave up and turned away. When Suun arrived home, it was pouring with rain. She took her umbrella and returned to her mother. The mother and daughter finally calmed down and poured out their hearts to each other. When Suun was young, her father, who had been working away, suddenly returned, and he brought back a woman. In those days, many women had experienced this kind of thing. Her mother tried to ignore it and pulled herself together, but when she saw her husband and the woman acting so recklessly in front of her, she could not help but cry secretly. When the woman threw her sexy lingerie in front of her for her to wash, her mother could not hold back any longer. In her opinion, she had temporarily lost her mind at that time. Soon the two of them were fighting, and her husband obviously only took the woman's side. After being slapped hard by her husband, her mother left with her 2 children. She knew very well what kind of life they had lived after that. Her mother hated her husband and the woman. So when she found out that her daughter was selling the kind of things that woman would wear, she was furious and couldn't accept it. Her mother knew that Suun was only selling that kind of thing to make money and change her life. Every time she said something that hurt Suun, her heart also felt broken, but she still couldn't accept that incident. Suun didn't argue and gave her mother a piece of clothing, which she had bought with her newly earned salary. Her mother's heart was full of mixed emotions. Jack couldn't get enough of her new school bag. She carried it around like it was a treasure, and couldn't wait for tomorrow to come. Suun had actually known her mother's pain since she was a child. Ever since her lover had appeared, she had always seen her mother quietly wiping away tears. That kind of pain was heavy even for a child to bear, and after they had left home, her mother had supported the family with her small body. Suun's tears flowed uncontrollably as she thought about this. On the other side, her mother stroked the clothes and scolded her daughter for buying something so expensive when she was having such a hard time. Then she burst into tears and laughed. Those tears were a mixture of joy and guilt, but undoubtedly more of a sign of her love for Suun. Meanwhile, Sihoon quickly identified the suspect through the shoe prints at the scene. It turned out to be the owner of the hardware store. Suun couldn't believe it. She questioned the man as to why he had done that. The hardware store owner had no remorse whatsoever. Instead, he accused Suun of selling indecent products and corrupting his wife, so he had to humiliate Suun. The boss's wife obviously didn't expect her husband to be accused of being too harsh, but the boss said it was. Suun was already in that state and was still selling those things. With that righteous look, I didn't know if I should think he was the victim. It wasn't until Sihoon said he wanted to invite him to the police station that the boss calmed down. The boss's wife quickly apologized to Suun. After all, they were neighbors. I thought that because of her face, Suun would definitely forgive. Suun Jinsuk, however, broke away from her hand and let the boss apologize. After receiving the boss's apology, Suun was very sad. She was sad that the cordial neighborhood relationship had undergone a drastic change. When she first moved in, the boss's family had helped her enthusiastically. Sihoon felt that this was the reason for Suun's reconciliation. However, Suun said that the punishment had already begun. Even if she didn't say anything, everyone would soon find out. The boss would also be criticized by everyone. In her opinion, this was the best punishment. It wasn't until later that Suun realized that she was still thinking too simply. Although most villagers boycotted Suun's adult products, some people supported her. Jimin in front of her is one of them. Originally, as a single mother, she was living in poverty, and the landlord suddenly demanded a monthly rent increase of 100,000 won. Her son had just entered elementary school at this time. She did not have that much money. Una claimed that the sudden rent increase was indeed a bit unreasonable, so she sympathetically suggested, "If you close down, then you won't have these troubles." Sihoon submitted a case closure report at the police station. The captain sighed. Suun is such a gentle woman. He didn't pursue it. The police officer questioned Suun, fearing retaliation. Sihoon decisively retorted, Suhoon is not that fragile. Seeing that the police officer was still questioning Sihoon, he shot him a nasty look. Even Sihoon didn't know that she would defend Suhoon like this. The news that the hardware store owner was the graffiti artist quickly spread throughout the village. After learning this, Jimin and the others stayed by Suhoon's side. Sora comforts her, saying that next time they encounter something like this, they must speak up. Although they cannot solve the problem, they can scold the person together. Jinky also expresses her anger, saying that what is truly disgusting is that the boss told Suhoon not to care too much. Jimin then encourages her, saying that this business will definitely succeed. She also wants to join in. After hearing this, the others are a little surprised, because Jimin had not joined before because the hair salon was so busy. After hearing that the landlord is going to raise the rent, the others strongly welcome Jimin's joining. Having these like-minded friends by her side makes Suhoon smile again. She regains her composure and sets off. The four-person sales team steps together towards success. Although they are full of confidence, it is not easy to succeed. The few of them look at each other. In the end, they all fix their gaze on Suhoon. Suhoon says they should have a meeting to discuss it and share ideas. But as the minutes pass by, the few of them still don't have a single idea. Seeing the gradually awkward atmosphere, Suhoon encourages them. Just then, the arrival of beautician Jinky gave Suhoon an idea. After witnessing the beautician's questionnaire survey, Suhoon had the idea to try something like it. She tried to understand her customers' preferences through a questionnaire survey. This could help them improve their performance more quickly. The few people immediately set about implementing this plan. However, the ideal is beautiful. The reality is cruel. Jinky had a bad start and came to the clothing store she frequented with some restraint. She was prepared to start with acquaintances and ran into her nemesis, Una. Una is shocked to see the words fantasy lingerie. She teases Jinky, saying that she should have told her in advance that she was going into this business. While listening to Una's teasing, Jinky's appearance is a bit cute. On the other side, Suhoon also encounters frequent setbacks. After the villagers heard Suhoon's reason for coming, they all made excuses to leave. Only Suhoon was left alone, flustered in the wind. Meanwhile, Sihoon is still in the village, investigating something. He will observe the villagers for a while in secret. After confirming that the other party is not suspicious, he crosses out the other party's information in his notebook. At this time, he walked into the record store and asked the proprietress if she remembered if there had been a major fire in the village 30 years ago. The proprietress instantly thought of something. Sihoon quickly took out his notebook. Just as Sihoon was about to ask what else there was, Suhoon's questionnaire survey arrived. The proprietress immediately put on a respectful and distant attitude and dismissed her on the grounds that she did not have time. Suhoon, who had been busy all day, got nothing out of it, so she set her sights on Sihoon, who had just walked out of the store. After she explained her intentions, Sihoon refused on the grounds that he was on duty. Just as she was about to leave, Sihoon seemed to sense Sun's disappointment, so he gave Suhoon 5 minutes. This made Suhoon overjoyed, although someone was willing to take the survey. Because of her gender, Sun's brain frequently short-circuited when she asked questions. This made Suhoon embarrassed, and so did Sihoon, because the questions in the questionnaire were really a bit revealing. Just as Sihoon didn't know how to answer, Suhoon quickly said that it was an anonymous survey and no one would know. Sihoon whispered that someone would know, but he still insisted on completing the survey for Suhoon in embarrassment. And Suhoon also gave him a candy for his son to express her gratitude. Suddenly Suhoon saw someone passing in the distance and immediately called out to him to continue the survey. Seeing Sun's appearance, Sihoon's mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. Compared to Suhoon, the three on the other side didn't have it so easy. Not only did they not get a copy of the survey, they even got into an argument with two villagers. When they heard the two village women talking about the hardware store owner, the three of them thought that the owner would be criticized and blamed. Unexpectedly, they heard the two saying things like Suhoon was lustful and bad. Instead, they felt sympathy for the upright hardware store owner because he got angry and did something like that. This made the three of them intolerable. They accused the other party of being wrong for being the victim, but the other party was obviously a shrew. Seeing that the situation was not right, Sora protected the highly educated Jinky behind her, and the two sides began a fierce verbal battle. As the situation escalated, the three of them reappeared looking like this. Afterwards, the few discussed keeping this matter a secret from Suhoon, but who knew that as soon as they turned their heads, they saw Suhoon, who had also been rejected. Suhoon was instantly stunned by the appearance of the few. The few hastily panicked and covered up, but Suhoon guessed at once that they must have had a fight. Just as Sora and Jinky looked at each other, not knowing what to say, Jimin gave an explanation. It was the three of us who fought. This exaggerated acting was hard not to see through. Suhoon asked them to tell the truth. Suhoon, who had learned the reason, was very sad. She didn't know why she, the victim, was not understood, and when the women in the village got together, they would always gossip about her occupation behind her back and even attack her personally. Suun listened to all of this with 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. And once again, Si-hoon witnessed this scene and felt sympathy for this woman. That night, Suun could not sleep, her mind filled with worries, until the sun rose. She came early to collect the spring water. Suddenly, Suun saw a sandbag next to her. She looked around and saw no one, so she slowly walked up. Suun let out her emotions with punch after punch. She had no idea that Si-hoon was standing not far away, watching her with interest. After learning that Sora had been bullied, her husband stayed up all night. He threw a black bag in front of Sora's face. Sora panicked instantly, thinking that her husband had acted impulsively and done something irreversible. Fortunately, her husband's method of retaliation was not what she thought it would be. Her husband even made a threat to take revenge one by one. Sora stared at her husband speechlessly. She had thought that Suun would be devastated by this incident. Unexpectedly, Suun became more and more determined, firmly stating that she would never give up. They got ready and set up a stall in front of Jimin's hair salon. Not only did they prepare tea, they also gave away gifts to customers who accepted the survey. But even so, some people still said that Suun had not changed her mind yet. Suun did not choose to back down, but instead, she argued with the other party. She asked the other party how she should change her mind. She just needs to make a living like everyone else. She has never hurt anyone or harassed anyone, so how should she change? This argument left the other party speechless. The butcher first couldn't stand it and chose to support Suun, while some of the others supported her. Others turned away. Everything is difficult at the beginning, but with hard work, anything is possible. The investigation that followed went very well for Suun. There was a constant stream of people. Even Una's son and the police officer came to fill out the form. It was a very fulfilling day for the four of them. Sara was a little worried that the risk of losing money by giving away gifts like this would be high, but Suun believed that such efforts would all pay off in the future. The others unconditionally believed in Suun. On the way back, Suun happened to see Seo Taeji's music work. The comments of the judges on the show were extremely sharp, belittling him to worthless. Many people may not know that Seo Taeji can be considered the originator of the Korean wave idol, but at that time, he was also not recognized or understood. This made Suun think of himself. I don't know when Si-hoon appeared and frankly admitted that this was too ahead of its time. People will always reject things they are unfamiliar with. Suun feels that the other party must be very sad to hear such comments. Si-hoon, however, says that saying such things will sell. Only those who persevere will succeed. Si-hoon seems to be talking about Seo Taeji, but he is actually encouraging Suun. He is very determined, so you must believe in him. Suddenly Si-hoon falls into a dream. In the dream, a baby is in a fire and is in danger. At that moment, a woman rushes in despite the danger. Then she handed the baby to a nun and left. Just as he tried to see the woman's face, he woke up. That day, Suun discovered that the husband of her cheating best friend had returned to the village. Not only that, but the husband was hanging out with her best friend. This was simply unacceptable to Suun. She followed them all the way and found the two of them talking and laughing as if nothing had happened. Junkyu even moved into her best friend's house. Suun's appearance left the two of them speechless. Junkyu explained that Donchul had introduced him to a job and that he would be staying there until he was accepted. Suun angrily rebuked her husband for having the nerve to stay in her brother's home. Suun also felt aggrieved, claiming that she had no money and could not return, and that it was Donchul who had invited her to stay. Junkyu reckoned that Suun would not divorce because her son would not agree to it. He stated firmly that he wanted Suun to tide over the difficulties together. After he finds a job, he will appear in front of his son with his head held high. This infuriated Suun so much that the next day she once again fell into a state of absent-mindedness. Jack thought that his mother was having a hard time at work and gave her a fish head. After inquiring, he learned that everything was going well, so he asked his mother for money to buy toys. Suun was about to take the money when she realized that her wallet was missing, and the wallet was in Si-hoon's hands at this moment. Last night after he dropped Suun off at home, Si-hoon saw Sun's wallet that she had left behind. He drove back to return it but saw Sun's lost bag. Curiosity made Si-hoon follow, and he also learned about Sun's conflict with her husband. Si-hoon has also become one of the few people in the village who knows the reason why little Junkyu ran away. When he came back to his senses, Junkyu appeared in front of him. Everyone was curious about Junkyu's sudden return. The team leader even kindly reminded Junkyu to control his temper and introduced Si-hoon to him. Junkyu quickly said hello, but Si-hoon said unceremoniously, "Trash." There was silence in the air. Fortunately, Si-hoon added, "I saw you littering on the roadside." Junkyu thought Si-hoon was joking. Unexpectedly, Si-hoon stared at Junkyu with a displeased look. He must make him pick up the trash on the ground. The team leader quickly tried to make peace to avoid escalation. Obviously Si-hoon was disgusted by the words and actions of this scum last night. Meanwhile, The sales quartet was analyzing the results of the survey report and came to a conclusion: sexy lingerie and magic wands are things that many people want to buy, but most people are worried about being criticized by others and the price is not cheap, so they are all discouraged. The report also shows that none of the customers who have purchased them have any intention of repurchasing. After all, magic wands are not so easily damaged. Based on the above, Suun concluded, they need to target wealthy women who haven't bought one yet. But where can they find such women? Jinky sighs. There are plenty of such women, such as the wives of members of the royal club. But before that, they must deal with the wife of the club's president, Una. Those women all follow Una's lead, but Una kept causing trouble at the first sales meeting. It is obviously not easy to win her approval. Jinky's husband's sudden return interrupted the meeting. Chang-hoon agrees with Jinky doing this business, but after hearing that the others have set Una as their target, he is worried that Jinky's relationship with Una will deteriorate and affect the expansion of his pharmacy. His husband keeps pouring cold water on Jinky. Jinky is so angry that he wants to bet with his husband. He asks his husband what if Una buys his products. Chang-hoon doesn't think much of it and says that if it really happens, not only will he buy these products, he will also wear this sexy lingerie and dance in the village. Jinky thinks that he must teach his husband a lesson. Meanwhile, Suun is surrounded by the women in the village. The owner of the grocery store's cousin has opened a new photo studio, and everyone wants to go and have their family portraits taken to boost business. Hearing the words family portrait made Suun feel very uncomfortable. The landlord also said at this time that he heard that Jun Kyu ran away from home after a fight with Suun, and this time, Jun Kyu didn't go home after returning. It is speculated that the two are about to get divorced. The landlord wanted to confirm this matter, but Suun looked at the child next to her. She was afraid that these words would spread to school, so she retorted loudly that it was a misunderstanding. Although Chang-hoon diffused the awkwardness in front of her, she felt very awkward. She blamed herself for making excuses for her husband. Chang-hoon looked up and saw Si-hoon appear at the door. Si-hoon had come to return the wallet. The recovery of the lost item made Suun smile and thank her over and over again. Si-hoon knew about Sun's troubles, so she asked about the progress of her work. She also said that if there were a lot of things to worry about, she should just focus on her work. Si-hoon's advice is what Suun needs right now. She puts aside her worries and makes an appointment with Seo-yeon to find out what Una likes. Unfortunately, Una lacks nothing except a handsome husband, and the only thing Una is interested in is other people's misfortunes. Everyone is busy saying that it is better not to tell others about Sun's misfortune, so the only happy person, Jinky, acts as the judge. She is caught in a dilemma between choosing Sara and Jimin's misfortune. Suun suddenly thought of a detail. Una seemed to care a lot about Jinky's actions. She realized that Una would definitely be interested in Jinky's misfortune, so the group set out. While Una was at Jimin's shop getting a hair wash, Jinky arrived unannounced. Seeing Una, she pretended to be surprised. The two put on a show. As expected, Una became more and more excited as she listened. When she learned that Jinky was leaving, she hurriedly stopped her. Una said she didn't care about Jinky's appearance. She even warmly greeted Jinky and sat down to chat. Jinky said that her husband had said many hurtful things to her because she sold underwear. Hearing those words was vulgar, and Una was instantly interested. Jinky then said that although her husband was angry, there was also a happy side. Speaking of the first sales meeting, she also bought sexy underwear. She secretly wore it and was seen by her husband. At that time, her husband became like a beast. The atmosphere reached a climax, and Una swallowed hard, letting her start talking. But just then, the other two people in the plan arrived. They brought limited edition underwear and deliberately showed it to Una. Seeing that Jinky was about to leave, Una hurriedly pulled her back into her store. Jinky made a three-finger gesture. Una couldn't calm her emotions after seeing this number for a long time. While Jinky was gesturing at the underwear and saying that she wanted to leave, Una generously said that she wanted to buy all of it. Although she was not interested in this, she could not just sit back and watch Jinky work so hard. Jinky's attempt to refuse was very effective, and Una happily paid for it. Si-hoon, on the other hand, looked at the scar on his hand and fell into memories. It seems that he was the child in the fire back then. He had found the nun who had asked about the woman. The nun said that the woman had handed the child over to her and then left. The only thing she knew was that the woman was about 20 or 30 years old at the time. What she knew was that the other person was a Catholic. She was wearing a wooden rosary and had a ticket to Busan in her hand. The nun suspected that the woman was from Busan. Thinking about this, Si-hoon felt a deep sense of powerlessness. He didn't know if he would ever find that woman. On the other side, the sales team of four celebrated together for a night, but as soon as they walked out of the hotel, they saw Una's husband walking into the hotel with a woman. Everyone was shocked and full of confusion. Driven by curiosity, they asked Seo-yeon. From Seo-yeon's mouth, they learned that Una was wearing underwear, but her husband scolded her for being shameless, leaving Una alone in the empty house. Obviously, it's not just about looking at underwear. but also the person wearing it. Seoyeon confessed that her mother knew that her father was seeing other women. After hearing this, the women felt a mixture of emotions. They felt sympathy for Una's situation, but also worried about being returned. Unaware of what was happening, they walked up to the door of Una's store. When they realized what was happening, they were about to turn around and go back the way they came, but they heard Una's voice calling out to them. Just when they thought Una was going to return the product, Una said she was very satisfied with the product. Her husband had been pestering her all night. She even invited the women from the club to the store and told them about the effects of the underwear. Seeing Una pretending to be strong as if nothing had happened made the others feel even more sympathy for her. Meanwhile, Suun thought about her own experience. Back home, she asked her mother why she hadn't divorced her husband, although they had moved out when they were young. Her mother had never completed the divorce proceedings. Her mother sighed and said that she had considered divorce at the time, but in those days she was afraid of being labeled a divorcee. Even if they lived separately, terrible rumors surrounded her. She couldn't believe what would happen after a divorce, so it had just gone on like that until now. After Suun's mother finished telling her story, she suddenly realized that Suun seemed to be considering divorce. But then, in the conversation with her son, Suun hesitated again. Her son said, "Tom doesn't want to do weekend homework. My family, Tom is from a single-parent family, so he only draws his mother in his drawings. Everyone asks him where his father is." The son said he felt the same way. These words made Suun feel conflicted. Jinky received a phone call and called her husband home. When he saw Jinky holding underwear in her hand, he was very excited. The husband immediately said he would go wash up first, but Jinky said it was for him to wear. Chang-hoon then remembered the bet they had made. He was shocked that Una had bought sexy underwear, but the most pressing matter at the moment was to fulfill the bet. The husband did not let Jinky down, so Chang-hoon immediately started dancing in his underwear in the street. At the police station, the news was broadcast about an arson case. The police officer could not help but mention the captain's serial arson case from 30 years ago when he was a rookie. The captain instantly became angry and lost his appetite. That case is the captain's sore spot. It's still an unsolved case. The police officer said that someone set fire to the town. In the chaos, they kidnapped children and only captured newborns. Si-hoon immediately looked through the files in the archive. It was clear that he was also one of the victims. He always thought that he was abandoned by his parents and came to find his mother, but found a completely different truth. Donchul was excited to tell everyone after learning that his wife was pregnant. He had no idea that his wife had cheated on him. Soon's husband, after 8 years of marriage, he had given up hope. Even the doctor said that his condition was a miracle. This news was really disgusting to Soon. After her husband left, Lucy hurriedly said she knew what Suun was thinking. She explained that she was sure it was Donchul's child. Lucy even warned Suun not to say anything. She had no shame in ruining someone's family. She said with righteous words that it would be better for everyone if she kept quiet. These words left Suun speechless. She returned home with a heavy heart and saw that her husband, the culprit, had returned home without notice. Her mother explained that Jungkyu had gone to pick up their son. Although she really wanted to slap him, she could not do so in front of the child. Her mother also told Suun not to quarrel in front of the child. Suun then called her husband outside and accused him of coming home without notice, making her mother feel bad. Jungkyu retorted that there was nothing wrong with him coming home to see his child. Suun did not expect him to be so shameless. Jungkyu treated her like a victim, claiming that if he really had no shame, he wouldn't be struggling outside and wouldn't be unable to return home. He even said with a straight face that he had asked his friends, and they said that every man in the world would cheat. He accused Suun of always haggling over one mistake. Suun couldn't stand it anymore and told him that this matter could not end. Hearing that Lucy was pregnant, Jungkyu was momentarily distracted. He then swore that it must be Donchul's child and that he didn't care. Jungkyu didn't show the slightest remorse, admonishing Suun to learn to let go and bringing up the child. These words made Suun unable to bear it anymore. He didn't expect his husband to be so shameless. Jungkyu saw this and had to evacuate first. Before leaving, he even warned Suun that children are happiest with their dads. If they get divorced, they're hurting their children, and the child really likes his father. He was heartbroken to learn that his father had left again. The child asked Suun if his father came back to work, would they be able to live together again? This made Suun not know how to answer. Distracted, she left her mother in charge of the child and walked alone down the street. When she arrived at the river, she met Si-hoon, who was also preoccupied. Suun, seeing Si-hoon in this state for the first time, couldn't help but ask out loud. Si-hoon said that he had come here to find the truth. He has been pursuing this matter for more than 10 years, thinking that this is the answer. But he found a completely different truth, and he is very confused as all the directions of investigation have changed. Suun is the same. She frankly admits that she has only taken care of her family her whole life. But something incredible has happened. Now is the time to make a decision. She doesn't know how to make her child happy. Si-hoon knows what she is struggling with, and tells her that instead of guessing, she should ask her child, even if it is painful. She will not regret it. Suun listened to Si-hoon's words, and when she got home, she saw her son drawing my family. Suun asked him when he was happiest. Was it when the family was together, as in the picture? Her son's words made the indecisive Suun make up her mind. The next day, she packed up the family early and went to the lake. Junkyu thought Suun had made up her mind and praised her for making the right choice. Unexpectedly, Suun talked about what her son had said. Jack said that when you smile, I smile too, and when I smile, he smiles too. A happy person will make another person happier. But Suun believes that unhappiness spreads faster. Suun bluntly said that she hasn't really laughed after witnessing Junkyu's affair with Lucy. Now she finds her husband's laughter disgusting. If she is not happy, her son will feel it. Junkyu angrily scolds Suun for planning this trip just to say these nonsense. In order to cheer up the divorced Suun, her friends conclude that the only way to make people feel beautiful is to make money. It so happened that they had a 2-day, 1-night trip that could make money and relieve stress. Before they set off, Jinky repeatedly told Sora and Jimin that the main task this time was to help Suun change her mood and never mention marriage or her husband in Sun's presence. Jimin said that she didn't have a husband to worry about. At that time, Suun also hurriedly rushed over. The few embarked on a 2-day, 1-night journey together. Soon after, the four landed on the island, but before they could sell, the Women's Association president gathered everyone and went to the beach to catch seafood. In order to give them some time, the four of them volunteered to help. Suun worked extremely hard to buy some time. However, the contact person and the president of the Women's Association argued with each other. Seeing that no one was paying attention, the four of them hurriedly asked. They learned that the two of them were about to become relatives. However, the children suddenly fell out with each other, blaming each other's children for their faults. The two of them argued and suddenly started fighting. The villagers were already used to this. The four of them immediately rushed up to break up the fight. These two people are the key to their sales, but the two people fighting didn't care at all. Suun and the other three became the victims. What's even more deadly is that the two people fighting and beating each other up. Several people watched as a bag of products scattered on the ground during the fight. The farce also stopped at this moment. The few people had had enough and were about to pack up the products and leave. Unexpectedly, the underwear hanging on the clothesline was fully displayed. The villagers were dumbfounded and looked at the products with interest. Suun immediately came forward and said that she could explain it in detail for everyone. The president was also a little embarrassed about ruining the product, so she agreed to Sun's proposal. By late at night, the products had been swept away by the villagers. A few people sat by the sea, drinking and enjoying the rare happiness. To celebrate, Jimin suggested playing Truth or Dare. Honestly, tell each other about fantasies in that area. Sara said that she had always wanted to try playing in a car, because in those days, cars were a symbol of wealth. That feeling must be wonderful. Jimin, on the other hand, feels that she is not well educated and wants to be with someone smart in a smart place, while Jinky, who is always gentle and considerate, is even more explosive and wants to face interrogation in an interrogation room like in the movies. Suun shyly says that because her ex-husband didn't like women to be proactive, she got used to being cooperative, but now she will start thinking about what she wants. Seeing this, the others help Suun release her true nature. With friends who share her interests, Suun gradually forgets about the unhappy things. Si-hoon's first attempt at cooking is predictable. Tom can't help but make fun of Si-hoon's cooking. Jack, however, feels that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. The most important thing about food is the taste. So Tom takes the lead and tastes it. The moment the food enters his mouth, he can't help but let out an exclamation. Si-hoon quickly asks how it tastes, but Tom says that the outside is completely burnt while the inside is undercooked. Why has Si-hoon become a nanny? The story begins a day ago. A day ago, Si-hoon ran into Suun. Suun invited Si-hoon to her home the next day. Her mother had lived in Busan for more than 30 years. Perhaps Si-hoon could find out something from her mother. But just as Si-hoon arrived at her home, a phone call interrupted them. Sun's younger brother had been in a car accident and was rushed to the hospital, and her daughter had just given birth. Sun's mother needed to rush to the hospital to take care of her, but she couldn't find anyone to take care of her child. Sun's mother was at a loss for what to do when she suddenly looked at Si-hoon in front of her. She had no choice but to make an awkward request, and Si-hoon had no choice but to agree to the request. In the end, he had to rely on the hotel to solve the problem of the children's food and clothing. He overheard the two children whispering that he was forced to take care of them. They had no expression on their faces, didn't say much, and were a bit fierce and difficult to get along with. So Si-hoon pulled the corners of his mouth, returned to the room with a benevolent face, and proposed to play a game of catch with the children. Jack explained the rules of the game. Si-hoon was very serious when playing the game. What's more, Si-hoon seemed to have a super talent for this. At first, the children looked at him with adoration, but as time went by, Their adoration turned into impatience. Si-hoon never made a mistake. The two of them went from participants to spectators. The children said they didn't want to play anymore. Soon, Tom was called away to take a bath. Jack was left alone to play cards with the other children. At this time, the child asked Jack if his parents were really divorced. Jack generously admitted that although his parents had divorced, they still loved him very much. The child lost at cards and deliberately found fault with Jack, pushed him over, and said defiantly that if he didn't like it, he could call his parents over. Si-hoon's appearance was like Superman to Jack. Hearing Si-hoon's identity as a policeman, the child immediately became afraid and hurriedly apologized. Si-hoon taught the child to be friendly with his friends, and then pulled Jack back. When he was packing his bedding, he was attracted by Sun's photo on the wardrobe. It was a photo of Suhoon when she was young and won the Miss Pepper title. Si-hoon was mesmerized when Jack suddenly appeared behind him. Before going to sleep, Jack expressed his gratitude to Si-hoon for helping him today. If Si-hoon hadn't appeared, he would have definitely answered the fight. And if his mother knew the reason for the fight, she would definitely be sad. Jack didn't want to make his mother sad and asked Si-hoon to keep this a secret. Si-hoon didn't hesitate to agree and read a storybook to lull him to sleep. After a long time, he lay down next to Jack and fell asleep. After Si-hoon returned from a business trip, Suhoon learned that Si-hoon had babysat Jack for a whole day. He was both grateful and guilty. Si-hoon didn't think much of it, saying that the child was the one who suffered when he was a babysitter for the first time. Si-hoon was speechless and a little embarrassed, so he quickly excused himself. Suhoon remembered the clams she had brought back, so she wanted to get Si-hoon some. Unexpectedly, Jack immediately walked up to his mother and whispered, "Uncle can't cook." Suhoon had to shyly suggest that they finish the noodles before leaving. Si-hoon stayed behind at Jack's urging. They had dinner together like a family. Si-hoon really liked the feeling. After dinner, the two walked side by side. Si-hoon said he didn't need to see him off, but Suhoon just stopped by to buy some things. Si-hoon, who was self-conscious, was immediately embarrassed. To ease the awkward atmosphere, Suhoon said she had a good time with Si-hoon. She bluntly said that because they didn't know each other well, Si-hoon seemed more comfortable as a stranger than a friend. Then she asked Si-hoon carefully what she was looking for in the village. Suhoon saw that Si-hoon didn't want to say, so she hurriedly explained that it didn't matter if she couldn't say. Unexpectedly, Si-hoon told her without any hesitation that she was looking for her mother, because when she was young, she was adopted to the United States and didn't know who her parents were. This was the only clue, so she came here. Suhoon was surprised by Si-hoon's background and didn't know how to comfort her. Si-hoon then said, "There's no need to worry or be comforted. After all, we are more comfortable as strangers than as friends." But Suhoon obviously cares, especially after she went back and heard her son say that Si-hoon praised her for being pretty and read bedtime stories to her son. Suhoon was secretly a little worried about Si-hoon, and Si-hoon's investigation hit a snag. Recalling the captain's attitude towards the arson case, it was clear that the captain was a breakthrough, so he asked the captain to go to the captain's house tonight to consult about something. On the other side, Suhoon was bumped by a man on the street. The man claimed to be her high school classmate and was very excited to see you. Seeing Suhoon being a bit cautious, the man quickly said his wife's name. Suhoon learned that it was a good friend from high school, and she also let down her guard. Then the man invited Suhoon to his suburban flower farm tonight to do a home sale for his wife. What was suspicious was that the man said his wife would not feel well because she had hurt so many people. Suhoon hesitated for a while but still agreed, so she wrote down the address of the man's farm. But after going home to prepare everything, she was a bit cautious and asked Sora to go with her. Unfortunately, Si-hoon couldn't go with her because of indigestion. Suhoon had to set off alone. Si-hoon bought gifts and was preparing to go to the captain's house when she heard the grocery store owner gossiping to Si-hoon about the real reason for the divorce. Si-hoon instinctively stayed and listened. The owner insisted that Suhoon must have divorced because of lingerie sales and that she probably wouldn't do it anymore. Sara was instantly annoyed when she heard this. She retorted that Sun's business was doing well now. The owner and owner's wife of a flower shop in the suburbs begged Suhoon to come over at night to sell. The owner of the record store heard something wrong. "I heard that the wife of the owner of the flower shop has run away and has been single for a while." These words alerted Si-hoon. On the other side, Teddy wanted to trick Suhoon into drinking, but was rejected. Unexpectedly, Teddy became infuriated and stopped pretending. He grabbed Suhoon's bag. He asked Suhoon to change into sexy lingerie products. During the struggle, Suhoon kicked Teddy in the ribs, gaining a little time to escape. But this is Teddy's territory, and Suhoon can't escape. Fortunately, Si-hoon arrived in the nick of time and gave Teddy a good lesson. Si-hoon was nearly knocked out by the other party because he was worried about Suhoon. Fortunately, as a criminal police officer, he is relatively resistant to beatings. He wrestled with Teddy again. Soon Si-hoon successfully subdued Teddy. Suhoon, who had never experienced anything like this before, was shaking with fear, and it was only after Si-hoon's reassurances that she came to her senses. The police arrived soon after and took Teddy away. Si-hoon, on the other hand, personally escorted Suun home. He told Suun to rest and take it easy and that they could talk about making a statement tomorrow. Suun was very sensitive after this incident. Her friends didn't know about last night. Sara was indignant because she overheard the proprietress gossiping about Suun's divorce last night. She encouraged Suun to work hard to quickly succeed in silencing the village people's tongues, and invited Suun to go door to door selling together tomorrow afternoon. Suun did not hesitate to agree. Even though she was shocked last night, life does not allow her to stop. At the police station, Teddy's interrogation did not go well. Teddy denied his crime and even slandered Suun for seducing him. This greatly angered Si-hoon. The police officer asked Suun when she would come to make a statement. In a case like this, confrontation between the two parties would speed up the process. But Si-hoon did not want to let Suun come here in order to stabilize Sun's psychology. The police officer said he could not understand it. He patted Si-hoon and realized that Si-hoon had been injured in the fight. Si-hoon did not care and just wanted to solve the case as soon as possible. Suun was anxious and restless. Seeing underwear made her think of last night. Hearing that it was Si-hoon who called, her heart settled a little. Si-hoon asked her to meet tomorrow afternoon. Suun, however, explained that she would be going back to work the next day, which made Si-hoon feel a little helpless. Suun carefully asked Si-hoon to keep this matter a secret. She was afraid that the villagers would think that her business had brought trouble to this quiet town. Si-hoon promised to try not to let this spread. Unexpectedly, the police officer, in order to show off his prowess, simulated in front of the villagers the heroic scene he faced the criminals in the countryside last night. Although he did not say who the criminal and the victim were, the grocer's wife keenly deduced the important points. The policeman sighed. The shopkeeper really knows how to get to the point. The villagers were sure that the victim was Si-hoon. The scene changed, and the villagers appeared in front of Si-hoon. They recklessly scolded Si-hoon for her indiscretions in front of their children. This situation left Si-hoon at a loss. Fortunately, this was only Si-hoon's dream, and everything that happened in the dream was what Si-hoon was worried about. Because of her business, she was afraid that she would not be understood by everyone. This was also the reason why she asked Si-hoon to keep it a secret. But the next day, she found that the villagers were discussing her. Suun was even more scared when she heard the pork butcher's wife calling her. She tried to calm herself down and not think about it as she went about her work. But what happened that day had already had a shadow over Suun, and it made her unable to continue working. Coincidentally, Si-hoon happened to see this. Si-hoon persuaded her to take some time off. Suun still firmly refused, because her own affairs had caused a lot of trouble for her colleagues. She didn't want to spread more ridiculous rumors. Si-hoon told her that avoiding problems was not the solution, even if the pressure was great. Facing the problem head-on was the best way to solve it, but Suun obviously still hadn't listened. Unintentionally, she suddenly realized that Si-hoon was hurt. She felt a little guilty. Because of Suun's escape, Jinky took over her tasks. What puzzled them was why Suun, who was so dedicated to her work, would cancel her appointment. Soon they learned the reason from the owner of the video store. The two immediately went to Suun's side. Sara hugged Suun in distress and blamed herself for not being with her that day. At the same time, Sara was also very angry that Teddy's mother had even joined forces with the people in the town to file a petition. The proprietresses of many shops are going to the police station to testify tomorrow. This news hit Suun hard. Before leaving, Sara and Jinky assured Suun that they would discuss and solve this problem with Jimin tomorrow. They would never tolerate the bullying of innocent victims. Suun is torn between running away and facing the problem. In the end, a comment from her son makes her decide. Her son and Tom are being bullied at school. Tom thinks that the other kids are too strong and wants to avoid them. Her son says that no one should hide if they have done nothing wrong. Suun is ashamed by her son's words. She decides to face the problem head-on. Jimin is furious when she hears about it. She puts on a villain makeup for everyone and plans to go to the police station to seek justice for Suun. Suun also joins the villain makeup team. The group strutted arrogantly and menacingly into the police station. Jimin took the lead and told the police not to believe the testimony of those women, saying that their statements must be emotional and outrageous. Unexpectedly, the police officer said that their statements were all in support of Suun. It turned out that the villagers had long heard about Teddy's eccentricities from his ex-wife. They were all here to speak up for Uncle Jong. This made Sara unable to understand. Obviously, those women had been saying bad things about them behind their backs. The proprietresses hurriedly explained that they were only saying that Suun sold indecent products. Suun was both upright and hardworking, and they recognized that. Suun was very moved by everyone's defense. At this time, Teddy was escorted in. He was still slandering Suun. The irritable Jimin could no longer bear it and was about to fight directly. She ignored the police's attempts to stop her and rushed up to take Suun's revenge. Seeing this, everyone rushed up one after the other, and the scene became a mess. Seeing Teddy's unrepentant look, Suun, who is usually gentle, finally lost her temper. She shouted at the crowd and walked up to Teddy and punched him. After Suun vented her anger, she returned to her usual obedient self. She was worried about using violence herself. Si-hoon, however, said he didn't see anything and believed that no one else there did either. Soo-hoon took this opportunity to thank Si-hoon and apologize to him, thanking him for saving her the other day and apologizing for being sensitive before. The others bought tofu for Soo-hoon to ward off evil. The pork butcher's wife was surprised that the hardware store owner's wife supported Soo-hoon. After all, the two had had a falling out before. The hardware store owner's wife frankly said that it was only natural to support one's family. Before, she could only support her husband, but she always felt that she owed Soo-hoon. Soo-hoon was very grateful. Jinky was in a good mood and immediately said that she would treat everyone to a meal. Si-hoon recalled Sun's previous words and deeds at the police station and couldn't help but laugh. At that moment, Soo-hoon suddenly called. Hearing Sun's voice, Si-hoon tried hard to suppress his laughter. Soo-hoon wanted to meet Si-hoon tomorrow. Si-hoon, however, stayed up all night just to finish the Teddy case report. His over-concerned behavior made the policewoman feel very suspicious. The police officers guessed that Si-hoon must want to buy some discounted sex toys. Meanwhile, an unexpected guest arrives in the quiet village. He deliberately bumps into a passerby, and the other person's wallet ends up in his hands. And this man actually knows Sora's husband. The man proposes to meet and says that there is a very safe job recently to invite Sora's husband to participate. Sora's husband has obviously quit the criminal life. He is very satisfied with his current life. However, the man is not going to let it go. Soo-hoon wants to help Si-hoon find his parents, but she is rejected. Soo-hoon said, "If you reject me like this, I don't want your help next time." Si-hoon accepted Soo-hoon's kindness out of desperation. Si-hoon took Soo-hoon home to the investigation room and told her the clues she knew, except for the woman who saved him. The rest was the arson case. Soo-hoon learned about this case for the first time. Si-hoon showed his scars and talked about the recurring nightmare he always had. This was the basis for him to be sure that this case was related to him. Soo-hoon couldn't help but feel a little sad. She wanted to help Si-hoon find the truth as soon as possible. She said that because of her occupation, she could definitely help Si-hoon. Afterwards, Soo-hoon began to look through the clues and carefully took notes with a pen. Unconsciously, the two of them forgot the time. It was getting dark when Soo-hoon left, but carelessly she forgot to take her notes with her. Seeing Soo-hoon's diligence, Si-hoon felt warm. Thinking of the notes, Soo-hoon returned and found the door ajar, so she pushed it open. Si-hoon was sweating and asleep in the living room. It was obvious that he was suffering from nightmares. In his dreams, he wanted to see the woman's face. The difference was that this time, Soo-hoon appeared in front of him when he woke up. The next day, Soo-hoon invited all the village mothers to watch an adult movie at the cinema. After everyone watched the movie, Soo-hoon's business was booming. While selling products, she also kept detailed customer records. Soo-hoon did this to help Si-hoon find his parents, and learned that his mother was most likely a Catholic who carried a wooden rosary. Soo-hoon decided to investigate from this clue. Soon she discovered that there was a woman on the scene who fit the description perfectly. Soo-hoon took a closer look at the woman and discovered an amazing clue. She excitedly rushed to Si-hoon and told him about her discovery. Unexpectedly, Si-hoon said that he had already ruled out that woman. Soo-hoon was very embarrassed and said that she really couldn't believe in TV dramas. Si-hoon approached the captain to ask for some information about the family of the victim 30 years ago. He was told that most of them had moved away, and the only family the captain had contact with was the one that ran a hanbok shop in the next town. But he hoped Si-hoon wouldn't reopen the case, as it would undoubtedly reopen the wounds of the victim's family. Si-hoon didn't explain, and the next day, he and Soo-hoon went to the hanbok shop disguised as a couple about to get married. Soo-hoon was so excited that she almost couldn't call Si-hoon by name. Giving herself away, she asked the old man for help changing clothes as an excuse to get away from him. Si-hoon looked around, and soon he saw a missing persons poster. Si-hoon was about to pick it up when Soo-hoon had already changed clothes. Seeing Soo-hoon in a hanbok made Si-hoon's heart flutter. He stared at Jong-suk until the old man called out to him several times before he came back to his senses. While the old man was helping Si-hoon find clothes, Soo-hoon quickly ran up to Si-hoon and asked. Si-hoon then remembered what he was doing, and looked at the flyer. Si-hoon confirmed that it wasn't him. While the two of them were whispering, the old man returned, and Si-hoon explained that he was afraid that letting the old man remember would bring back bad memories, so he chose to hide it. The old man said that these kinds of memories could never be forgotten, and that unless he found his child, he would never forget until the day he died. After losing her child, she had been unable to sleep or eat, so her husband was worried that she would collapse and chose to move. She believes that her son will one day appear just like Si-hoon. The old woman is convinced that Si-hoon's parents are also waiting for him. Si-hoon is calm, but Soo-hoon is crying her eyes out. Although he has not found his mother, he has still gained something. Si-hoon has always felt like an abandoned child, but the old woman's words make him feel that his mother may be even more sad than he is. Looking at the sleeping Jong-suk, Sihoon can't bear to wake her. He takes off his jacket and covers her with it. The close distance made Sihoon lose his focus, but Suun opened her eyes inopportunely. Suun didn't notice Sihoon's unnaturalness and proposed to go to his home tomorrow to get some more information, but Sihoon refused. Suun thought the other party was busy and asked when would be more convenient for Sihoon. The next day Suun kept hovering around the phone. When she heard the phone ring she became excited. Although it wasn't Sihoon calling, it was still good news. Because of Suun's hard work, she had the best sales record for the first half of the year. From then on, she was able to receive a fixed monthly salary of 100,000 won. On her way back, Suun happened to run into Sihoon. Suun quickly jogged up to him and asked if he had a minute. Suun happily shared the news of her promotion with him, but before Suun could finish speaking, Sihoon looked very busy. Unexpectedly, he turned around and was ruthlessly exposed. Sihoon didn't know how to explain, so he had no choice but to leave. On the way back, Suun couldn't figure out why Sihoon was distancing himself from her. But no matter how hard she tried to guess, she could never have imagined the real reason Sihoon was distancing himself from her. As they spent more and more time together these days, Sihoon noticed that he was often distracted by Suun. At this time, the phone rang. Suun, who couldn't figure out why, wanted to ask for the reason. She asked Sihoon if he was deliberately avoiding her. Sihoon didn't know how to answer such a question. He was indeed avoiding Suun, but it was never because of Suun. Sihoon hung up unintentionally, leaving Suun at a loss. Sihoon was restless and wanted to explain, but didn't know where to start. In the end, he had to go out for a walk to relieve his boredom, but soon after, he discovered that Suun had come to see him. Suun had come to return the data. She thought Sihoon didn't need her help. She explained that she really wanted to help Sihoon. Maybe she was clumsy and couldn't provide any help, but it was never because she didn't value Sihoon. Sihoon wanted to say something, but couldn't hold back the words for a long time. Suun immediately said that she was a little upset. If she hadn't been drinking, she would never have said those words. Suun also felt uncomfortable because the way she got along with Sihoon made her feel relaxed and happy. She felt that the two of them would become even more awkward starting tomorrow. Suun said everything she wanted to say. Sihoon also stopped hiding and confessed with courage that he was indeed keeping his distance. But it was not for the reasons Suun said. It was because Suun made him confused. As for the reason for the confusion, he didn't know either. On the day of their wedding, the husband told Jinky that this day was the most important day of his life. But after many years of marriage, her husband had forgotten the anniversary and had an important appointment. Jinky was very annoyed and complained to her best friend about her husband. Sarah said that her husband didn't have the money to buy a gift, so he took the initiative to do the housework on the anniversary. Jinky felt that the heart was the most important. Sarah had 4 children but had a lot of difficulties. Her family of 6 lived in an area of less than 20 square meters. What's more, she was pregnant again. For the poor, pregnancy is a painful thing. Sarah doesn't want the baby, but her husband thinks it's cruel. She tells him to face the reality, even if they can't give their children what they want now. Her husband feels guilty because he chose the wrong person when he was young. After being released from prison, he hasn't been able to find a job. On this day, the man who has just been released from prison comes back to him and asks him to help him do a job. He only needs to drive and keep watch, and he can get a share of 1 million. But Sora's husband resolutely refuses. He promised his wife that he would not let his children down, but the man provoked him by mentioning Sora's foster parents. This nearly drove Sora's husband to the brink of collapse. The man was in no hurry to leave. He appeared before Sora again. Sora took Jinky and tried to leave. The man kept provoking him with his words. From their conversation, Jinky learned that Sora's husband had a criminal record. Perhaps he was afraid that Jinky would look at him with prejudice. Sora didn't even dare to look at Jinky. When the bus arrived, she left without even looking back. When she got home, she heard that her husband was going to look for a job. Sora couldn't help but get angry. She blamed her husband for fooling around with that kind of person in the first place. She told her husband not to look for a job. She had long since given up hope. Her husband confessed that he knew there was no hope, but he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. He couldn't bear the thought of his wife going through a dangerous abortion procedure. The sound of the children crying interrupted the couple's quarrel. In this family, they couldn't even avoid quarreling with the children. Her husband was in pain. The words of the man kept running through his mind. He wants to live a stable life and shoulder the burden of being the head of the family. After returning home, he thoughtfully covers the children's quilts and cries behind Sora's back. Sora has been avoiding Jinky since that day, until the day she celebrates son's promotion. She was left alone by Jinky. Sora was very worried, thinking that Jinky wanted to cut off contact with her. Unexpectedly, Jinky didn't care and even gave Sora a set of hairpins. She saw them in the market and thought they looked very nice, but she doesn't have any children, so she thought of Sora. Jinky confessed that she envied her for having children. Everyone has their own difficulties. There's no need to be too pessimistic. Money is the most hopeful, they just want to work. These words encouraged Sora. Jinky was still arguing with her husband. Her husband suddenly remembered the vows they made when they were young and cancelled his appointment with a client. He decided to celebrate their anniversary together tomorrow. Jinky sat in the restaurant and looked at a family of 3 next to her. Lost in memories, she and her husband met through a matchmaking service. When they first met, she made it clear that she wanted to be a modern woman and not have children. She confessed that Chang-hoon, as the eldest son, was not suitable. She left without caring about his attitude. Unexpectedly, Chang-hoon approached her a month later. In this month of fighting with his parents, he won. He promised to let Jinky live the life of the most modern woman in Korea. Jinky was moved by his sincerity. Chang-hoon went to a clothing store before the appointment to buy a gift for Jinky. 2 men who had just robbed a gold shop hit a passerby as they fled. Sora's husband, who was in the passenger seat, was so nervous that he wanted to call for emergency services, but the man forcibly pulled him away. However, he was still worried, so he took the opportunity to call for emergency services. The man was so angered by his scared appearance that he left without paying. Sora's husband didn't know at the time that the man who had been hit was the husband of his wife's best friend. After returning home, he could not calm down for a long time. Sora thought that her husband was worried about life, so she sat beside him and comforted him. Encouraged by today's Jinky, she decided to give up aborting the baby in her womb. She believes that as long as she works harder, life will get better. Sora also expressed her admiration for her husband, who has never gotten into trouble despite his encounters. This made her husband feel a little guilty. Fortunately, Chang-hoon successfully passed through the critical period due to timely rescue and woke up. Soo-hoon went to the hospital to visit as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, Si-hoon also happened to arrive to make a statement. The two looked at each other awkwardly. It turned out that after Si-hoon hugged Soo-hoon last night, that feeling made him confirm his feelings, and he knew what Si-hoon was going to say without thinking. Soo-hoon, however, avoided leaving, and right now she has no time to think about emotional problems. So after Si-hoon entered the ward, Soo-hoon used the same trick and left. Si-hoon asked Chang-hoon about the situation at that time. Chang-hoon only knew that there were 2 men's voices at that time. One was yelling and the other wanted to check on his condition. She could clearly feel the other person touch her face. After that, she lost consciousness. Jinky asked if she could find someone to call an ambulance. She wanted to express her gratitude to the other person. Si-hoon said that it would be difficult because the other person had not identified themselves. Before leaving the hospital, Si-hoon saw Soo-hoon again. He apologized for embarrassing Soo-hoon and made it clear that he really liked Soo-hoon. He didn't know when it started, but just being with Soo-hoon made him happy. Si-hoon hopes that Soo-hoon can think about it before replying. Soo-hoon, however, says that she will not think about it. I have never thought about having feelings for you, but no matter what the conclusion is, I will not consider dating Si-hoon. Right now, she just wants to work hard and take care of her son. Although Soo-hoon said this, her heart was full of mixed emotions. Jinky encountered difficulties in the hospital. As someone who has never worked before, she has no idea how to care for someone. Fortunately, Sora came to her aid in time. Worried that Jinky would not be able to cope, she even asked her husband to buy some toiletries for her. Jae-hyuk then learned that the man who had been hit was his wife's friend's husband. When he learned that Chang-hoon had regained consciousness, Jae-hyuk's heart finally eased. He brought some things to the hospital and wanted to leave quietly. Unexpectedly, Chang-hoon woke up at an inopportune time. Jae-hyuk, who was feeling guilty, wanted to leave, but was stopped. Soon after, Jinky and Sora returned. Jae-hyuk insisted on leaving no matter how much he was urged to stay. Sora sensed something was wrong with her husband and made an excuse for him. Then she found her husband and asked what had happened. Unable to bear the mental torture, her husband told Sora the truth. This made Sora unable to believe it. Her husband wanted to turn himself in, but Sora opposed, even if it was selfish. She didn't want her child to be criticized. Si-hoon's investigation has made progress. He found traces of blood in the public phone booth and deduced that the person who called the ambulance was the perpetrator. Soo-hoon was embarrassed to see Si-hoon again, but her son was excited and invited Si-hoon to his home to play. Before Si-hoon could respond, Soo-hoon found an excuse to refuse. She just wanted to buy her son a hot dog and leave as soon as possible, but the shop owner regretted that the only 2 left were bought by Si-hoon. Si-hoon quickly offered it to Soo-hoon, saying that he only wanted it to fill his stomach and that he didn't really like it. The next second, he was mercilessly punched in the face by his colleague. You clearly said last time that the hot dog in the small town was your favorite food. Jack knew very well that Si-hoon's uncle had deliberately given it to them. He sighed that it was really hard to give up something you wanted to eat. Soo-hoon was busy with training and wouldn't be free until the evening to help out at the hospital. Basically, everything at the hospital was taken care of by Sora. Jinky sighed that getting to know everyone was the luckiest thing in her life. The more she said this, the more Sora's heart ached. On the way back, Suun learned a sentence from Jimin's understanding of love. If you are happy with that person, then you like them. And this sentence kept hovering in Suun's mind for a long time, so she made a bold decision and took the initiative to ask Sehun out. Sora was busy at the hospital until late at night before returning home. She kept looking at Jinky, who had been grateful to her, and her conscience became more and more uncomfortable. Looking at the gift from Jinky, she couldn't help but burst into tears. Unable to bear the condemnation of her conscience, Sora decided to confess to Jinky. In order to go on a date with Suun, Sehun dressed up formally. After planning the date location, the car broke down. By the time Sehun arrived in front of Suun, he was panting. He had prepared a plan, but it had to be aborted. So he was led by Suun to the amusement park. Although it wasn't as good as the farm Sehun wanted to go to, there were still a lot of fun things to do. Even though Suun had been here a few times, she had never played there before. Sehun said, "Then let's experience all the entertainment here today." Suun had a great time, but Sehun made a fool of himself. Suun suddenly saw the dolls that Sehun used to sell as a side business, but he hadn't kept any for himself. Sehun saw this and felt that this was his chance to show off. He said that he was always first in marksmanship at school, and confidently offered to win the doll for Suun. Sehun adjusted again and again, and finally shot a balloon. He was ashamed that he had planned to perform well but failed. Suun was happy but also troubled. She confessed that when she came on the date, she had hoped that it would not be very happy, so that she could be carefree. Then she said to Sehun, "Your company makes me very happy." These words reassured Sehun a lot. Sehun said that the weather forecast had originally predicted rain, but fortunately it was sunny. Otherwise, it would be troublesome to go back without a car. But as soon as he finished speaking, it started raining. Sehun found a plastic bag anywhere and protected Suun as they ran to the nearest bus stop. Inside the bus stop, the two of them looked at each other lovingly. The two were just about to taste each other's lips when, unexpectedly, Sehun's phone suddenly rang. It turned out that Jae-hyuk had turned himself in to the police. Suun came to the police station together. She was also extremely anxious. When she turned around, she saw Jinky and Sora. Jinky ignored Sun's shouts. At that moment, she was filled with anger. She said heartbreaking things to the two of them. Jinky could forgive the car accident, but she could not forgive the act of fleeing after hitting someone. Then she learned from Sehun that it was Jae-hyuk who called the ambulance. This made Jinky feel very complicated. Her husband was in prison. Her friend had broken up with her, and Sora was lifeless. She really wants to explain her complicated situation to Jinky, but she doesn't have the face to do so. Suun comes to her door to encourage her. The damage has already been done. If she doesn't try to make amends, she will really lose Jinky as a friend. Sora's help is lacking in the hospital. Jinky is very rusty at nursing. Her husband notices that Jinky is distracted because of Sora, so he advises his wife that Jae-hyuk is not primarily responsible for the accident. Her husband knows that Jinky treasures this friendship. He hopes that Jinky can let go and forgive Sora. At the same time, Sora lied to the child's father as before, saying that he had gone out to make money. But the daughter had already grown up and told her mother that after her father was punished, they would still be good to him. Sora saw that his daughter could face it so bravely, and he could not avoid it either. So he went to the hospital, hoping that Jinky would give him a chance to explain. Seeing that Jinky still did not want to face it, her husband kept persuading her. Sora said that she had chosen to hide it because of the child before, and she was also unaware at first. Jinky interrupted and asked if her purpose was to reconcile. Sora explained that she didn't want to see you sad. If Jinky could understand her current situation, she might not be so miserable. Jinky said that we are no longer friends, so don't worry about yourself. But when she just got up to leave, she saw Sora covering her stomach in pain. She was nervous again. Jinky rushed to the front of a couple of playful young lovers and borrowed a wheelchair directly. She pushed Sora in a hurry to the emergency department of the obstetrics and gynecology department. After diagnosis, Sora was found to be fine, and Jinky learned that she was pregnant. She blamed herself for saying those harsh words, but in the end, the kind-hearted Jinky forgave Sora. Jae-hyuk also came to the hospital under Sehun's care to solemnly apologize to the couple. He will atone for his sins for the rest of his life. Jinky issued a letter of understanding hoping that Sehun can control this case and not spread it outside. Otherwise Sora's child will suffer from the gossip. Sehun says he will explain it again to the people who know about it, and the matter comes to an end. The group of friends once again throws themselves into their careers. Suun prepares a product catalog. The group of friends divides up the work of understanding the products and writing product descriptions. Jimin takes the male products, and Sora knows at once that Jimin is in love again. Jimin says that they need to find a place to study, although she likes to date at home the most, but it is not convenient at home at the moment. Suun is very curious as to why home dates are good. Jimin said that if a man invites a woman to his home for a date, he will definitely do something very restricted. This remark made Suun's imagination run wild, because she is currently on such a date. After dinner, Suun took over the dishwashing. claiming to have brought something to play with. She asked Sehun to go to her bag and take it out to get ready, but Sehun was confused when he opened the backpack. Sehun opened Suun's product bag, while Suun really wanted to play the minigame. While playing, Suun was still uneasy and frequently distracted. The atmosphere became awkward for a moment. Suun took the initiative to apologize and confess the reason. Unexpectedly, Sehun said that this kind of thing that was bound to happen was actually something he wanted. Seeing Suun, Sehun closed his eyes and kissed her without hesitation. This is how decisive and straightforward love between adults is. After indulging in the sweetness of love, Sehun received a call from the team leader. The captain learned from the proprietress of the Korean clothing store that Sehun had come here to look for his mother, so he contacted his junior who had investigated the case together back then. The other party said something suspicious. After the director of an orphanage passed away, some clues seemed to be related to the missing children case. That orphanage had sent 20 children to foreign adopters, but 11 of them had no admission records but adoption applications. After comparison, it was found that the photo of a 3-year-old baby girl was the abducted child, and the price of 10,000 won per child was written in each file, which was a huge sum of money at the time. The only connection between the victims was that their midwife was the same person, but her alibi was very reliable. Sehun found the midwife, but she had already developed dementia. Her daughter said that her mother also had an assistant back then. She couldn't remember the exact name for the time being, but then the old woman suddenly became lucid and said that the person now owns a shop in the town center. Just as Sehun was about to investigate further, the old woman asked him who he was. He looked up the file and found that the daughter of the person the old woman had mentioned had died just a few months after birth, and her mother was the owner of the record store. Sehun immediately went to the store and the owner admitted that she was the girl's mother. After serving Sehun a cup of tea, the owner began to tell her story. After her son passed away, she became a volunteer and became an assistant midwife. She then cried that the child died simply because she could not afford to treat a cold. Sehun quickly noticed the key point. At that time, she was so poor, but just 2 years later, the proprietress was doing business in the town. Sehun was curious about how the proprietress, whose husband was just a farmer, had improved her financial situation. Seeing that the truth was about to surface, Sehun suddenly felt dizzy. The proprietress had drugged the water. Sehun woke up and found that she had been tied up and imprisoned. The proprietress no longer hid it and said that it was her who had taken away those children. She doesn't consider what she did a crime, because the children she took were from poor families, who couldn't afford to take them to the doctor when they were sick. The boss lady smugly claimed that she was saving those children, which made Sehun furious. The boss lady heard this and went over to check Sehun's forehead, and frankly admitted that Sehun was mistaken. He was not one of those children. The boss lady would tattoo a small cross on the children's foreheads so that she could recognize them later. As for Sehun's claim of burns on his arms, the proprietress firmly stated that she loved those children very much and would never let them get hurt. After she finished speaking, she gagged Sehun. Just then, Soon's voice was heard outside the door. The proprietress became alert and went out to get rid of Soon, but accidentally knocked over the bamboo lamp. When the oil on the ground was touched, the fire spread instantly. Soon came to the door after learning the proprietress's identity from the villagers. The landlady panicked and tried to get rid of Soon. Soon saw Sehun's notebook at a glance and asked where Sehun was. The room was engulfed in flames just as Soon often dreamed in his dreams. Unlike the dream, Soon appeared in front of him. Soon rescued Sehun from the landlady, who was firmly locked by the sales team. Sehun issued an arrest warrant on the spot, which the villagers found unbelievable. Although it was 30 years later and the statute of limitations had expired, she will still be punished for imprisoning Sehun. Sehun, however, is confused because he has once again lost track of his parents. Soon brings Sehun a package that Sehun's family received. It was sent by Sehun's foster parents abroad. They go through the warehouse and find the clothes Sehun was wearing when he was adopted. At this time, the sales team suddenly arrives. Sehun quickly puts away the clothes. Jinky invites Sehun to visit her home with Soon at the weekend. They have long since noticed that the two are dating. At the party, Sarah wanted a stove, because Soon had worked as a nanny at Jinky's house, and when she went to the utility room to get it, she accidentally knocked over a box, and inside was a dress exactly like Sehun's. Soon realized that perhaps Sehun's long-lost mother was Jinky, but she didn't say anything right away, because Jinky had never once mentioned a child. Soon was afraid that bringing up the subject would hurt both of them, seeing how much Jinky loved children. Soon hesitated several times before speaking up. After seeing Sehun get along well with Jinky, Suhoon asked Sihoon why he ruled out Jinky. Sihoon said that the timing didn't work out. Jinky only married here 20 years ago. He hoped that his mother would be as gentle and cheerful as Jinky. Suhoon decided to tell Sihoon his guess after hearing this. Sihoon was unable to calm down for a long time after learning this. He couldn't wait to confirm it with Jinky. Jinky was shocked but then said she didn't know anything about it. Sihoon was a bit at a loss when he saw the other person leave. Then Jinky went back to the utility room and looked through the clothes she had kept. She was so confused. Obviously, she had a reason not to admit to Sihoon. In the next few days, Jinky was distraught and frequently daydreamed. Sihoon, who was unwilling, stopped her and wanted to ask one last question. Sihoon was heartbroken after hearing her words. He quietly packed up the information he had been investigating. At this time, Jinky also couldn't sleep at night. Obviously, her husband didn't know that she had given birth before marriage. Even though she was in pain, she chose her husband over her child. Suhoon couldn't get in touch with Sihoon. When she arrived at Sihoon's door, she found that Sihoon was running a high fever. She hurriedly ran to the pharmacy to buy medicine. Upon learning that Sihoon had a fever, Jinky was also very nervous. She chased after Sihoon to ask about his condition and confessed to Suhoon that she was very worried. Jinky's words were heard by her husband. What she didn't expect was that her husband had already anticipated this. A long time ago, he had seen the dolls and clothes in the utility room. His intuition told him that they were not just random things, and Jinky claimed that she didn't want children and wanted to be a modern woman. But whenever she saw a baby, she would tear up. Her husband understood that there must be a reason behind this. He didn't say anything because he felt that Jinky wanted to bury the past. Instead, he persuaded Jinky to face reality. His understanding and encouragement gave Jinky the courage to face the past. Sihoon opened his eyes and saw Jinky sitting by the bed. Jinky apologized to him, saying that everything was Mom's fault. The mother and son embraced and cried together. It was not until nightfall that Sihoon reluctantly watched his mother leave. When Sihoon's friends heard that Sihoon was Jinky's son, they were all shocked and couldn't believe it. They were happy for her, but at the same time, they felt for Jinky's decades of suffering. Although the mother and son recognized each other, they became awkward with each other instead. Sihoon politely and respectfully said thank you. Sarah and Jimin hurriedly taught them to welcome each other warmly. Seeing this, Sihoon quickly changed the subject. Sihoon was actually afraid that Jinky would feel pressured. Suhoon comforts him, saying that they can get to know each other better over time. But Sihoon doesn't want a sudden change. Sihoon is informed that he will be transferred to the Seoul Joint Investigation Team next week to investigate the disappearance of a child. This makes Sihoon feel overwhelmed. He decides to discuss it with Suhoon and Jinky. Although Jinky is reluctant, she doesn't think she has the right to stop Sihoon. She tells Sihoon to do what he wants. Suhoon, however, says that she doesn't think this is right. But you two aren't close enough. You shouldn't just part ways like this. The way to get close to your child is to make them a lunchbox just like you did when you were students. The second step is to give your child an umbrella on a rainy day and walk them home. The third step is to have a cup of soju with your mother. After 3 rounds of soju, the mother and child will argue because Sihoon won't eat his carrots. Suhoon understands that they have become close without even realizing it. Before Sihoon knew it, it was the day he had to leave. Suhoon promised to meet again when they were older and promised to live a good life together. Jinky couldn't bear to see Sihoon go, and told him to take care of himself. A gust of wind blew Jinky's scarf in front of Sihoon. Sihoon picked it up and walked over to Jinky. For the first time in his life, he helped his mother tie her scarf. After Sihoon left, Suhoon encountered a major problem. On payday, the office's cash was stolen. After the police investigated, they received shocking news. They had been the victims of fraud, and the money had been stolen by their superiors. It turned out that the leader's store in Seoul was also fake. It had only been open for half a year and had already closed down. This news was like a bolt from the blue. It was as if Suhoon's world had stopped spinning. Suhoon thought back to all the hard work she had put in, and the moments when she had racked her brains for success. Her efforts, her sweat, and even her hopes for the future all collapsed at this moment. While Suhoon was giving up, her friends were rousing themselves. Jinky rented an office, and Sora and Jimin were tracking the progress of the case, which made Suhoon feel ashamed. Fortunately, the police station came with good news. They found the leader's figure. Suhoon couldn't wait. She had to go to the boss to settle this matter. After a week of searching, Suhoon found the leader and wanted to know what had happened. The leader confessed that she had always been passionate about this industry. She exhausted her assets and opened a store in Seoul. As more and more people found out, they began to protest, saying that vulgarity threatened society. She couldn't withstand the pressure and had to choose to close. But she still wasn't going to give up, so she came to the countryside far away from Seoul. There, Suhoon and the other excellent salespeople showed her a chance to make a comeback. But the person who imported goods from abroad was arrested. Apparently someone had reported it to the police. He fled because the police wanted to prosecute her for customs duties. Upon hearing this, Suhoon didn't know what to do. Just then, The voice of a police officer came from outside the door. The leader hurriedly prepared to evacuate. She told Suun not to give up if she believed this was the right path and to think of another way. Then, to Suun's shocked gaze, the leader leapt off. Suun kept thinking about what the leader had said. Is this the right path? Until they arrived at the store. Sihoon's song was playing on TV again. Recalling what Sihoon had said, Suun knew that if she just kept at it, she would definitely succeed in the end. Suun no longer hesitated and decided to continue down this path. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. Suun succeeded. She opened their first store in the town. But then came a wave of resistance. But Suun would not give up her beloved career. Okay, that's the end of today's story. Thank you for your support and company. See you next time.